Welcome back to another episode of Absolutely Fabulous. This week we are talking all about the reappointed Ag Minister as well as the Environment and Water Minister. What is going on there? We'll also do a little bit of a review of Farmer Wants a Wife.
Hi, welcome to Absolutely Fabulous. My name is Gillian Fennell, also known as Station Mum 101. I love everything about agriculture, especially the people and especially communicating about what makes Australian ag so special.
And I'm Katja Williams, a beef, cattle and cropping farmer, and I love all things ag, and I'm also known as the ultimate farm wife. Together, we are Absolutely Fabulous, and we are talking all things agriculture beyond the headlines.
And we can't wait to give our opinion to you, and we hope you enjoy it.
So let's get into today's episode.
Let's start with some chit chat. Gillian, it's been a massive fortnight. Let's start with you.
Well, I have been just doing my usual thing. I haven't been in hospital or on death's door, unlike my co-host Katja, who has let herself get so terribly run down that it's just been, everyone's been worried sick about you. So why don't you tell us what happens when you don't listen to your own warning signs and you try to be Superwoman?
When you don't listen, you go downhill pretty quickly. So some context for our listeners. About 3 weeks ago at the end of Easter, my family contracted para-influenza and I was nursing them all back to health. I was still wearing all the hats that I normally wear, plus the farm, plus everything else. I got everyone else better. But I went downhill pretty quickly. So on the Monday afternoon, I pulled into the normal school pickup and I parked and I didn't feel well. But all of a sudden, I lost sight in one eye. I got dizziness and vertigo. I started getting tingling down one side of my body and realized that I was partially paralyzed. So my arms and legs were not working. So I probably should have called the ambulance, but I could smile and I could still do a couple of different things. I'd sort of pre-tested myself. I had 2 kids in the car with me. I was meant to be picking the other 2 up at school. So I rang my husband. He came straight in, and within the hour, so under the hour, I was admitted to Dubbo Base Hospital under a stroke code, where they ran a huge amount of tests, and that was a 3-day and 2-night stay. And at the end of it, they still weren't sure what it was, but they knew what it wasn't. So they sent me home, and I started to feel a little bit better. But then on the Sunday, I went downhill again, and it ended up being a combination from the GP on an emergency appointment on the Monday morning, because that was the next time I could get back into town, because I couldn't drive. I was still classified as a FWAW risk. I was still having dizzy spells, even though I'd been discharged from hospital. So the next time I could get to the GP or into town was on the Monday. We had the emergency appointment. On top of the para-influenza, there was a chest infection, an ear infection, and a couple of other little bits and pieces going on. So then that took another week of basically being in bed, and Ned'd go down the farm and he'd come back a couple of times during the day and he'd lift me out of bed and get me some to drink and something for the water, and go to the bathroom, and then he'd carry me back to bed because I still couldn't stand. And that's what the last 2 weeks have basically been like.
That is a hell of a way to get a rest. Don't do that again. I don't think I could cope, honestly. But please don't let yourself get so run down again. And ladies and gents, I don't know if we have any gent listeners, but if you're feeling not well, please, and I know this is really hard, especially if you live in regional, rural or remote areas. Often there's no one you can lean on for help. But, ask another mum, and this is the hardest thing, like when you have to actually ask for help, that is, because it's not something we're very good at. Our partners are busy. Often in-laws it's a strained relationship. You can't rely on them. And if you are lucky enough to have a good relationship with your in-laws and your sister-in-laws and everything, that is great. Lean on them. You know, often we're remote from our families. It's just so challenging. Katja, oh my God. But I'm glad you're back with us. Everyone will be so pleased that you're back. Oh, and you missed everything. You missed all the drama. You would have missed all Farmer Wants a Wife. You missed the election. You missed everything. You were too busy being ill.
I would have to say I did binge watch this afternoon while I sorted washing a couple of episodes. I'm not quite caught up, but I watched a couple of episodes.
Well, you won't know because you haven't been checking in, obviously, because you've had bigger things on your mind. But one of our listeners is in the same community as one of the farmers, and they've made their choice. And the lady is living in the town and working in the community. So
lovely.
I know who that one is, but I'm not gonna do any spoilers because there's been so many spoilers on the internet already.
Yes, that was one of my points in our review for Farmer Wants a Wife, is that I do not like the editing this season. There is too many spoilers in the editing. I don't think there's enough time being shown on the girls. So it almost makes it almost predictable who they're going to choose. And I don't like that. Like, I like when there's a good little twist or when you actually get to know them. So that's something I'm not really appreciating. And then all the news articles, as you said, like all the news articles are coming out, even on the socials. Tonight's episode, we're recording on Tuesday night, and tonight's episode hasn't even finished, but all the social media is going up about that episode. And I'm like, hang on a second, it hasn't finished yet.
I think this is a sign because this is a PR push. This is a sign that I think the show is possibly on its last legs. And they're trying really, really hard to generate that same buzz and excitement because you're not getting it from watching the show. And so they're trying to get it through other means and they're just not getting the engagement that they've had in previous years. And I think it's I think as an audience, we've got a bit of like reality TV fatigue. We know too much about how it works behind the scenes and all that sort of stuff now. So it's just sort of like lost. And I think we discussed this earlier when we were talking about Farmer Wants a Wife. The contestants are more savvy to it now. So it feels really scripted, but it's because everyone's more aware of what's happening. There's none of that sort of raw they've got people watching this in the first place. There's none of that sort of raw, sort of emotional cat bites, breakdowns. Like we've had plenty of crying and tears this season so far, which is understandable. It's a really, really high pressure situation, but like, yeah, everyone's just so, there's no like wild cards. There's no person that you can go, oh, like they're a bit off the hook. Like it's just everyone's just so bland. It's just so boring. Like where's some outrageous characters? That's what we want to watch it for.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem to have like the fast pace of it last time. Like it seems to be a lot more relaxed sort of rambling thing. And then you sort of hear like the farmer say, they'll have like a paragraph or something that they say, but they'll say it 2 or 3 times in the episode. It's like, pick a different soundbite, or share a little bit more. Like, in one of them, the girls were trying to move sheep, and I was like, show a bit more of that. Show a bit more of the country. Show a bit more of, that's what, I mean, that when I was watching it, that before I even met my husband and moved to the farm, that's why I was watching it, because some of those is really funny. But now also when I watch it, one of the farmers, I think it was Farmer Tom, he was shearing a sheep without his shirt on, and I was like, gee, that's going to be itchy. Like,
yeah, it is. Like, and you know, like I don't want to see them hanging. I want to see these girls in a kitchen with their mother-in-law. I want to see them all together cooking for a bunch of shearers or something like that. Like, yeah, it's just mum and the sisters and the girls, and it's just like that's what I want to see. Like that's what I'd log on to see. Like, and I don't know any of these people personally, but they're just all so boring. It's just like And if they're not boring, they're obnoxious, and it's just like there's no one there that you can really get behind. And that's probably got to do with editing and all that sort of thing. But I couldn't care less if these blokes found a forever wife. Like, realistically, like, there's nothing, I'm not invested in it because they're just also
Yeah, they're not showing enough. They're not showing enough personality. They're not showing enough of who everyone is for you to really rally behind them. And I think that's part of the issue with the editing this season.
I think also, like, comes down a lot to personality of the farmers, like, because I don't think the farmers that they've selected are like the world's best, most charismatic blokes in the world, which might explain why they get to that age and sort of are still single. Like, we had that young guy, the country music star wannabe, but I believe that he's went on there to sort of elevate his own profile, given the fact that he's now back on the rantan and he's on Tinder and all these sorts of things. So, you know, I don't think that was a genuine attempt to find his forever love or anything like that. I could be wrong. I could be disparaging him, but I will stand by that opinion. If I ever get to meet him, I'll tell him that. But it's just like these older, like the two older contestants, it's like, you know, they're not, I don't think they're terrible people. They're just bland.
I think there was just a lot more that could have been done maybe during the producing that could have led to a bit more. I mean, we know roughly what the farmers do for a living and what type of farmer they are, but I really would have liked to have seen a lot more on the block and a lot more initiation. And I know they probably don't do that from a farming enterprise side of it and maybe like business secret side of it. But I think it'd be like a lot of the dates, if you go back to a lot of the earlier seasons, a lot of the dates, they were pretty much all held on farm. And so you got to see different parts of the farm, and that was really nice. Whereas they seem to be taking them away a lot. So even we'll talk about the South Australian fellow, like they seem to go like and look at the oysters or always off farm.
That's because Kimber's boring.
Okay.
Like,
so it's geographically an issue.
There is like nothing to do there. And this is another thing. Like, so what sort of, is he still living at home with his mum and dad? Is that why they can't like have anything there? Like, have they had to pack mum and dad off and get them out of the house? Like, it's just such a random scenario. But friends of mine do know the guy from Billawheeler, and they said he is a lovely, lovely bloke, and they're at the local tennis club together. And because they're all, my friends are sporty, unlike me, I don't know what happened there. Yeah, they said everyone, the whole town, the whole community is just like so excited for him and just wants him to just find a really nice girl. But I don't know. I really think the Farmer Wants a Wife production team needs to get us in this selection panel. Like, we need to select the girls. We need to interview the girls. We need to interview the farmers and choose who gets on to go on TV, because I think that's what's missing. I think it's just everyone's just playing it too safe. I think we need that sort of inside track, because like I'd love to ask some of these girls, like put them in fictional scenarios. Like, if your mother-in-law came over to your house and took your washing off the line and hung it in the correct manner, what would you do? Like, do you want to stay at home all day and clean house and mind children and cook while everyone else gets to go outside and do heaps of stuff because that's your role? I would love to ask some of those questions of the potential contestants, and then those ones that are really like, I'm never 100% never doing that. Like, okay, definitely you're going to go and hang out with this really conventional farmer and his really traditional family.
That would be basically would we come up with 101 questions to ask in one of our earlier episodes? We came up with that full list. So it would definitely be something like that. And
the show would just be, it'd be fireworks.
Yeah.
Be fireworks.
Actually sent an email to one of the recruiters. She was recruiting, and she occasionally pops up in my inbox and is like, hey, do you know any farmers? And I was like, oh, I see, No, I don't. But basically, you know who I am from socials. This is where I sit, and this is what I do. Are you looking for a new co-host? Because I heard Sam's not doing it,
Yeah.
and they were like, "We're not looking for another co-host." And I'm like, I'm still going to put an application in to do something to do with the season. So once this season finishes, and I'm feeling much better, I'll finish that and pop it through to them, because they're like, there seems to be a really quick turnaround between when the show ends and when the first lot of girls peel off and everything falls apart. And I think it really is that reality hit and that reality change. So I'd love to work with them in that space about, okay, you wanting to marry your farmer. Let's talk about marrying your farmer and moving to the land and integrating into that family farming business, because that's where my whole ethos sits. That's the space that I'm working in, and I would love the opportunity to work with those girls, because sometimes they probably are a great match for them romantically. Let's give them the support that they need to be able to continue on. So I'd love to work with them on that, and I will probably send something through.
I think you definitely should. And I also do believe that they are currently looking for contestants for the next season of Farmer Wants a Wife already. So I've got a couple of single mate blokes. I challenge the Farmer Wants a Wife, I actually challenge the Farmer Wants a Wife production team to have your first single sex, same sex partners. I want to see lesbian farmers or gay farmers, or a set of both. I don't care. I want to see a bit of diversity. Get amongst it. I want to see a drag queen from inner city Sydney partnered up with a random sheep farmer from the back end of nowhere. And I want to see, that would be hilarious. I think that's just, you want to reach new audiences, get amongst it. Like, be brave, be bold. Yeah.
We've
I
already
want to.
covered in previous episodes the challenges behind that. But yeah, if you're wanting to mix it up, if you're wanting to keep it going, I think you need to give the girls more airtime in their personalities, so people rally behind them, and definitely change up the personas.
Yeah. And like Farmer Thomas said at the start of his thing, he's like, I've got a type, it's tall and blonde. So we were presented with, I don't know, was it 8 poor blonde girls and one poor little dark-haired girl who he really felt a connection with, and then like showed her the bush gate, or she showed us the bush gate essentially, and I think that's something the producers weren't prepared for, is the women to go, you know what, I'm not mucking around with this anymore, I'm out. Why should I waste my time here? Good on them.
Yeah.
Don't hang around.
Especially once they got to the farms and they realized how far away they were geographically, like that's a lot in itself.
Yeah. It's a big thing. All right, so we're pretty disappointed with this current season of Farmer Wants a Wife. Katja and I need to be recruited as the selection panel for the next season, most definitely. And if you're someone who should be on Farmer Wants a Wife as a contestant, applications are open now. I will put them on the socials for you. So anything else? You don't have any questions this week, I don't think.
Actually, I had a few questions come through. They were financial questions, and some of them I did not think really sat well with. No, let me change that wording. I thought they would suit better coming from a financial expert in the agricultural industry. So I sat down earlier this week with Carmen Quade from AgriFocused, and she answered those questions for us. So for question and answers this week, we have Carmen Quade from AgriFocused, who's come on to answer some of your questions. We've been asked some finance questions this week, and I thought we would get in one of the experts. Carmen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Carmen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you fit into the world of agriculture, and then we'll head into answering those curly questions that have been sent through to the Absolutely Fabulous team.
Okay, so I'm based at Toowoomba, New South Wales, so west of West Wyalong, so somewhere near the middle. And my husband and I have got a cropping property. And in addition to that, I run a business called AgriFocus, where I provide finance and business training for farmers.
So anyone who's looking to answer, like has more of these questions to answer, Carmen is your person to go to. She does run online courses as well, which are absolutely fantastic, and she is a wealth of knowledge. So Carmen, let's jump into our first question. So the first question that's been sent through by one of our AgFab listeners is, how can farmers prepare for and adapt to economic downturns and market volatility?
They don't ask you easy questions, do they?
They don't, no.
It's a really big one. Look, I think one of the things about the question is this whole cataloguing of or categorizing of farmers as just one clearly identifiable group that will all have the same strategies to deal with these things. And the reality is they don't. And often these things get thrown around saying, okay, well, farmers should have off-farm assets, or farmers should use farm management deposits, or farmers shouldn't have as much debt, and all of these strategies, thinking it's a one-size-fits-all approach. And we can just do one thing. All farmers can just choose one strategy, and that one strategy will work for everybody, and everybody will be capable of employing that strategy. And basically, it's not true. So I can run through a few little scenarios for different sorts of farmers, just perhaps to explain what sort of situations people are in. And that varies a lot. So initially, I think the thing is that everybody's just got to be alert to these things happening, because it's not a matter of if these things happen, it's a matter of when. So it's not a matter of if we have an economic downturn or market volatility, it's when we have market downturn, market volatility or economic downturn. So if we start with that sort of mindset that it's going to happen, it's just a matter of when. It's a lot easier to start thinking about how it might be dealt with. And it's also about thinking about too, knowing the structure of your farming business, the environment you're in, and what impacts on you the most. So and I guess this is probably more so looking at seasonal sorts of things, but somebody in a really reliable district might be more impacted by volatility in pricing because they're selling a lot less. So they've got less to sell, so a big drop in price can't be made up for by an increase in their quantity. So that's something to just be really aware of, what sort of situation you're in. So if you've got farmers in a situation where they've got low equity, potentially low profit, they're finding it hard to service loans, for them, preparing for bad times is essentially most likely to be paying down debt. So profitability is king. So if there's anything that can ever be done to improve profitability, especially profitability in the short term, that's got to be a major focus regardless of your farming situation. But once we've met those sort of immediate needs and we've done the easy things in terms of improving profitability, if you've got low equity, serviceability is an issue, then paying down debt really wins. Options for off-farm investment or anything else don't make a whole lot of sense in that situation. Now, if there's a business that's past that stage, they're comfortable with the level of debt they're in, there might be some issues with tax, and in that sense, something like a farm management deposit might really help because it allows the farmer to put money away in a high tax year. It's essentially a registered deposit, essentially. They can draw back down in a different financial year where their tax situation might be different and actually use that income. So that's just a way of evening out income across years. But if a business isn't paying a lot of tax, then that's potentially not going to be a strategy they can employ, and it's not going to be a strategy that's going to serve them very well at all. Further on from that, if a business is looking to need that cash to do something within the business or expand or do something else, essentially having a lot of money tied up in farm management deposits that might need to get drawn down at short notice might not be a good strategy either. Other businesses might be looking at off-farm investment, but if you're talking about off-farm investment in preparation for economic downturn or market volatility, it might not be bricks and mortar type off-farm investment. Not to say bricks and mortar investment isn't a good thing, not to say there aren't reasons why some farming families might say, okay, well, look, we're going to buy this. So that means that there's a retirement home for someone long term, or that someone's got a house to live in while they're attending university or doing an apprenticeship or something. Lots of really multifaceted reasons why someone might want to buy some real estate. If you're looking at something that's going to help you even out income flows over the years, you can't sell 10% of an investment property. You can't sell 5% of it like you can with perhaps another investment. So that's something that people have just got to be really mindful of. potentially, you know, ability to redraw on the equity, yes, you know. So these decisions are really, really complex. And I think I'd say to any farmer that's asking this question, really understand your business and work with some advisors that also really understand it. So if someone's actually just giving you advice which is all about ways of reducing tax, it's not necessarily going to be the most well-rounded advice. So you've got to see someone that, yes, understands the tax piece, because that is really, really important, but also understands the financial pressures your business might be under, the production issues that affect your industry, and also understand what your goals are and what your family's goals are over the next sort of 10 years. And then you can sort of start picking and choosing about the strategies that you might use to sort of overcome those economic issues. Does that make sense to you?
Yep, does to me.
Good.
And I think that's some really good dot points to think of. And without any more in-depth or specifics in that question, I think it's very hard to deep dive any further on that. So let's jump into question number 2. What advice would you give to a young person, especially women aspiring to enter into agriculture industry in financial roles, either on farm or in an agricultural financial company? So I'm not sure that person's in farming or ag at the moment. It sounds like they're wanting to jump into that world and environment.
Yeah, what a great part of the industry to be in. I think there's so many opportunities out there, and it's so good, and they keep getting better and better, and the technology is amazing. The ability to work from home in lots of these roles is just outstanding. Wasn't there a decade ago, and who knows what it's going to be like in a decade's time. So I think it's great. I think that finance area is one of those areas where you do need formal training. It really does help. It's not difficult to learn. A lot of it makes such perfect logical sense, but sitting down and putting the time into some sort of formal qualification would be a really good return on somebody's time and their money. So the qualifications in that area span from very early level certificates right through to a PhD or a master's degree, and they can be scaffolded. So you can do an initial certificate through TAFE or something and then build that into a bachelor's degree or an associate diploma and onwards and upwards from there. So I think really good, if whether you're on farm or off farm, to look at what sort of qualifications are available. And I would say to anyone looking at women, if you're talking about women particularly, looking at working off farm in the finance industry, I would say, and they're young, I'd say get cracking.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope I won't have to say this, say the same thing to my granddaughters. I hope when my granddaughters are alive that they have the ability to perhaps better manage family life and work life. But I know if you're a young woman and you want to have kids at some stage and you want to be a really active parent, and potentially the primary care of your children, it's really hard to balance that with a high-level career. So as many runs on the board you can get before you start taking time off for maternity leave, or when you start wanting to negotiate part-time working agreements, that's when you need to do them. So get stuck into it and really put that emphasis on the career for that period of time where it is your only focus. Unfortunately, it's not the same for young men who potentially can say, oh, well, look, I'm just going to start stuffing around through my entire 20s, do a degree in my early 30s, and then, you know, at 50 probably are at the same career point that they would have been anyway. It's really difficult for a woman that wants to be involved in raising children in a big way to make those same changes. And yeah, hopefully it's not the case in 20 years' time. If you're doing stuff on farm, you've got to realise that this is more valuable than time spent in the paddock,
mm-hmm.
and you need to get paid for it, and your voice needs to be heard.
And how do we do that, Carmen? Because we know that that's not common in the agriculture world.
Well, you just, like, it's no one is going to hand it to you on a platter. You've got to put your hand up and ask.
Mm.
And no one is going around thinking about you. That the reality is that no one is in your shoes. You can't expect anyone to be looking at anything from your perspective, especially if you don't put your hand up and ask. Mm-hmm. Now, if you put your hand up and ask and you get a no, that's a totally different story. But if you're saying, oh, that would never, ever happen, no one in this business would ever get paid for that, and you have never asked, well, that's on you.
Yeah.
That is really on you. So
Yeah, love that point.
I think you've got to start saying that, yep, we get our neighbour's 14-year-old to come and help in the shearing shed, and he gets, you know, $100 a run or whatever he's up to at the moment. That work is important and it's valuable, and the work that's done in the office in this finance area is important and it's valuable too. It's really good to be able to put a replacement value on that. So saying, okay, well, if I am working in this finance aspect, you know, an estimate of if we got our accountant to do this work for us, how much that would cost. So we can actually just see that this is bringing in a dollar value. Or if there are other opportunities that you're sourcing out, better deals on stuff, you know, better price for something, a better interest rate, whatever the situation is, putting the dollars around that and reporting back on that. At the same time, we're reporting back on how many lambs got marked or how many calves were born or whatever the situation is there. So it just becomes these metrics that just get talked about. So we actually can see that, you know, this role has got a lot of value.
Yeah, absolutely. Carmen, thank you so much for your time and answering those questions for our AgFabs. Where can we find you? And if we're wanting to dive more into finance and learn a bit more, where can we hook up to some of your courses and workshops?
Yeah, you probably can track me down on Instagram or Facebook. I think those search engines seem to work much better than Google. But yeah, just look up AgriFocused or Carmen Quade, and I think I'll be up there somewhere near the top. And I'd love to hear from anyone, that even if you just want a quick chat about something, more than happy to do that too.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And I will add the links in the show notes as well. So thanks so very much. And we'll continue on with today's episode.
Thank you, Carmen. We love a good financial expert, because that is one thing where I do not have any expertise whatsoever. Always happy to refer to someone who actually knows what they're talking about. So the election happened, Katja, and you were sleeping through it. You were drugged out of your mind for it. I wish I was drugged out of my mind for the election, because it was just the biggest bunch of nonsense that I think I've seen in a very, very long time. And from that, we've had a Labor landslide, which is pretty disappointing to a lot of people in the agricultural space, I must say. And we have had Julie Collins return to the ag portfolio, which continues to baffle and boggle the mind of many people in agriculture. And we've had Murray Watt, the man responsible for ushering in the live sheep ban, appointed to Environment and Water portfolio, which is making a lot of irrigators very, very nervous, because they're wondering what's coming. Yeah. So any thoughts from New South Wales about how this is going to shape up federally?
I would like to ask our AgFab listeners from New South Wales to answer that, because I don't know.
I've been sleeping. The chatter online is that everyone's saying the right things and welcoming people into their portfolios, knowing that we're going to have to build a positive relationship with them for at least the next 3 years. Mm-hmm. And given the state of the opposition parties, it could be forever before they get their act together. We've had leadership spills, we've had leadership challenges, we've had defections from one party to another. It is just, honestly, are we governed by children? To be completely honest, some of the behaviour and things that have been happening is just, I was profoundly disappointed.
Well, that is a big week in politics. It's a big week for ag and seeing where it goes. For those who are unsure who Julie Collins is, we spoke a little bit about her a few episodes ago about the AgriFutures Rural Women Awards, didn't we? So for a recap for that, she's not the person who we want in this role, is she?
Well, I don't know. Like, it's hard to say, because, again, like the Farmer Wants a Wife contestants, she's just really bland. And I live in hope that agriculture will eventually get the attention and respect that it deserves amongst the ministry, because at the moment it's sort of not taken seriously. But I was having this discussion with someone the other day, like, oh, you know, we need to build more renewables and all that sort of stuff and transition and whatever. I'm like, yeah, cool, that's whatever. But before that happens, we need to have a really good discussion about land use, because if you keep building renewables on productive farmland, then food is going to get more scarce and more expensive. And this is not just for our Australian consumers and customers, it is for all those people overseas that we feed. We, as Australian agriculture, we are responsible for a lot of global stability, because a hungry population is an angry population. It doesn't take long for people to start rioting if they're starving to death. Like there's a bit of a period in there between people being really hungry and pissed off, and then actually being like on starvation death's door. And so by having these good, clean, safe, affordable foodstuffs that we export around the world, we're responsible for a lot of people and a lot of countries being not as unstable as they possibly could be. I got nothing against renewables. Build your heart out. I don't really care. But we have to stop building houses and renewable energy projects on productive farmland, because otherwise we won't be able to feed anyone. And the people we can feed will need so much money. It's just crazy.
This is the same debate we were having with mining. Even only about 10 years ago. Why are we building mines in the middle of the food bowl in these beautiful farming lands? Why are we digging it up to put a mine there? Like, you can't eat coal, you can't eat oil and gas. Like, let's keep our food bowl intact.
Yep. And it's people say, oh, well, you can build them out wherever. That's fine. I drove from my place to Dubbo. There's a lot of country in between there that you could build renewable projects on. But then when you build the transmission lines and the batteries, you can't cut across someone's paddock because that's cheaper. You have to stick to the road corridors where you can already build stuff, because you cannot drive your harvester or your seeder or anything else around a bloody pylon.
Yeah.
Like, just stop. The government needs to, when the electricity companies and these say, oh, no, it's too expensive, we can't build it like that. The government has to say, I don't care. You're not building it through someone's paddock. Pick somewhere else. Yeah, it's just crazy. I just stop taking the piss out of agriculture. Like, without us, without agriculture, right, there's no society. We are the industry, we are the system on which all society is built. For about 10,000 years, or whenever agriculture started, in the cradle of humanity over near where Iraq and Iran all hang out today. Like, we're not saying you don't need these other industries, but holy hell, if you can't eat, you can't do anything else. And don't start kidding yourself that a factory is going to be able to provide food for people. It's just, it's just crazy. But anyway, I'll get down off my soapbox now.
I think we should leave today's episode there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for another episode, hearing about what Jillian and I think, not only in the representation of agriculture beyond the headlines, but also closing the urban and rural divide. If you have a topic you would like us to discuss, please send it on through either to Jillian at the socials or through to myself at the email address. You can find those in the show notes.